Hi, Linda.
Hi, Rena.
Hi there. So we're live on Facebook. Just for anybody watching out there, I'm Rena, the teacher training manager at the Shala, and I'm here talking to Linda about 4 very brand new workshops that we have put together. The workshops are for yoga teachers, and we have 4 coming up. The topics are online marketing, website SEO and email marketing, social media, and paid advertising campaigns. The study mode is virtual, online for these. And I just thought we could just have a little chat, Linda, today about what you're offering, who this is for, what attendees will learn, and maybe answer any questions that come up.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Cool.
we've got the first workshop coming up soon, haven't we? On
Yes,
July
we
the
have. Yeah,
1st.
1st of
And I
July.
think that's a really important one because I'm going to be addressing also people's beliefs and mindsets towards marketing. And I know that that's quite a big thing with the yoga industry and people who work within the yoga industry, that there's a very kind of salesy aspect to marketing that just feels a bit icky. It just feels like it goes against all the kind of principles of, you know, what you all want, who you're wanting to serve and what you're wanting to do. It just feels like you're going into a very commercial world. So that's one of the things that we work on at the very beginning of the workshop, is really just to kind of feel more open towards marketing and the benefits of its aspect of connecting with the people that you want to serve, and not doing a disservice by remaining hidden. And that's an important thing. It's working on that connection. And then once you've kind of got your mindset around, you know, the openness and the connection side of marketing, it really helps how you approach it moving forward. So I think that's quite an important thing that I'm quite excited to work with people that are feeling a bit apprehensive, especially.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because because of our trainings and because of being a school of yoga, I meet lots of yoga teachers all the time, and I do note that compared to any other industry I've worked in, actually, there is an apprehension, and I think some of that is I don't want to push, I don't want to sell things that people don't want, but my mindset has always been that if we don't communicate what we are doing as teachers, then how will anybody be able to connect and know what it is that you're offering for them to be attracted to?
That's the thing, you're not discoverable. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, people want to be seeked and found if you don't want to be pushed. But how will you be discoverable if you don't put yourself in the places where people can discover you? I mean, I'll give you an example of how, you know, for instance, online and offline work in perfect synergy together, because they don't work separately, they work together. So for some yoga teachers, you know, pre-COVID, putting a leaflet in their local, you know, coffee shops and, you know, local areas where people could pick up those leaflets, find out about the classes, and it be very kind of local. We didn't have that for the last 12 months because you couldn't be inside. Coffee shops weren't open, and, you know, the sort of small amount of, you know, quite effective offline marketing techniques were removed, you know. And the other day I was walking, I live near the river, I was walking by the river, and I saw a lovely little sign on a tree saying about, you know, riverside, parkside yoga sessions that happened at 10 o'clock every morning throughout the summer. And I thought, oh, wow, that's great. And I actually discovered it offline, but to book, you had to go to the website and book yourself on.
Mm.
So, you know, that wouldn't have existed in a very effective way if there was no way of contacting the yoga teacher. And of course, he or she probably won't want to have multiple phone calls. They don't want to put their personal number up on, you know, a leaflet that's stuck to a tree that
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
walks
yeah.
past. And it was in a very effective way. I thought, well, I've discovered you locally, but I'm connecting with you in a digital way. And I was able to look at their social media and just work out if it was something for me. So it was part of the discovery process. And
Mm.
that's very much something that, you know, I would like the students of my workshop to understand, that it's actually a discovery process. And, you know, it's a classic thing where people have to be aware of you, find out about you, and you have to be in the places that they hang out, basically, before they then consider you and then take that final commitment, which is to then, you know, work with you in some capacity, like going to a class or other services you offer.
Yeah, yeah. And really, we do see ourselves in a time at the moment where people that didn't hang out digitally are having to hang out digitally. You know,
Absolutely.
my elderly mum and my aunties are all now Zoom experts, and they hadn't even
Isn't it
heard of Zoom.
crazy? I mean, it's like everyone's fast forwarded 5 years worth of technical, digital, online knowledge into 12 months. I mean, we potentially could have lived in a very disconnected world. I mean, we have in some aspects because we've not been able to hug, see everybody that we wanted to in the last 12 months. So we were disconnected in some ways, but we formed connections in an online and digital way. And, you know, you either embrace that or potentially get so left behind that no one can discover you, because people are now very used to discovering online. And as you said, you know, even the sort of elderly population are great on Zoom, you know, FaceTimes a lot. And that's the way that we've all connected. And it's been a positive for digital and online.
Mm. Yeah, and from that, what I'm seeing is that compared to a year ago, so many students will come to me and say, well, I'm now going to be in a different country, or I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing, or there seems to be an expectation that things will be a little digital. And that makes me feel like these skills for teachers are really quite timely at the moment.
Yeah,
You know, we've seen that yoga has gone online for so many. It did for the you know, yoga studios or yoga entrepreneurs. Classes going digital. I just wonder, with where we are at the moment, with so many classes going digital, people getting more used to studying online, what does that mean for yoga teachers who don't necessarily have a digital presence? And you know, some teachers I speak to don't want to be on social media all the time. They don't want to put everything.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be social media. It can just be that you have a solid online presence. And if you don't control what your online presence is, i.e. by having a website, and when I talk about website, it doesn't have to be all fancy, you know, with shopping carts and pop-ups and downloadable guides. We're talking a window into how someone can contact you, you know. So, you know, I've worked with yoga teachers and people in the wellness industry that don't want to have an all singing, all dancing digital strategy. You know, they want to basically have their version of who authentically they are, but online, so that it's easy enough. So say, for instance, if someone recommends you, oh, I went to a great class, you know, or I watched a great class last week, and your friend goes, great, can you send me the link to, you know, whatever their details are? And you want to be able to just, at least at a very base level, be able to send a link to someone that you're recommending's website. Otherwise it becomes incredibly difficult to even recommend. So for anyone who's feeling that they don't want to kind of enter, you know, the online world in the way where they're doing on-demand videos, or they're streaming live, or they've got social media channels, you know, and video content, and they're doing live, so that can feel quite overwhelming. I would actually say start in a very small way, you know, and that's about, you know, making sure that you're authentically represented online. And that's also, you know, supporting the industry, because yoga studios have had to work very, very hard to stay afloat over the last 12 months, and pivoted and, you know, get themselves out there as quick as possible. And it does help if the pool of teachers that they're working with also have, you know, some strength, you know, having an online presence, whether that's just a good website or some good photos of them, or, you know, some good assets, or even, you know, potentially a little logo or something, however, just it's going to represent you branding wise. And I think that all helps. I think it just helps, you know, make everyone contactable and be discoverable. But you absolutely don't have to have the extreme. And that's the thing that I think actually puts people off, when they go, oh, you know, I would like to market myself, but I don't feel comfortable going on Facebook, or I don't feel, oh, you know, the thought of going on Twitter or anything like that. It's about really finding, you know, the channels that fit you. And we're not talking just social media, we're talking emails as well. Email marketing is, you know, historically very strong, because you can't remove someone's, you know, email platform. Say, for instance, there's trends with social media. 1 minute it's TikTok, next minute it's Clubhouse, next minute it's this and that. But also they evolve quite quickly, you know. So in 4 years' time, you might have spent all 4 years building up a huge Facebook presence, huge group, and then for it to, you know, the tide goes, and then you sort of, you know, you should be really building something up on another platform. But to actually get emails where people have authentically passed their email over to you for a multitude of reasons, whether you're, you know, collecting email data from people that have watched your classes, or that, you know, you've in return given a great, you know, resource for them, then that's important, because you've got that line of communication. So, you know, I work across all of the platforms and making sure that, you know, it's longevity as well. It isn't fads, it isn't trends, it isn't, you know, hashtag what's in at the moment. It's about building up a sustainable online presence that will see you through this year, next year, the year after, and it will evolve with you.
Yeah, I think two words there that pop out to me that are really important. One being sustainability, and specifically for yoga teachers as well, because teachers want to teach. They don't want to spend a lot of time, well, mostly, but from most of the teachers I know, that they want to focus on the crux of what they're doing, which is teaching, and having to change platforms, change strategies is just impossible, really. So sustainability is really important. I think the other thing is just, you know, yoga is about authenticity in itself. And so authenticity when it comes to communicating yourself is really important, but quite difficult as well, because there's a balance between overselling and underselling as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that in one of your workshops, you know, there is some skills and some learning around defining your target audience.
Yes.
And I just like, for me, that really fits with authenticity, because you want to just communicate what it is that you're offering. But you also want to pick an audience that is going to be attracted to what you're offering as
Absolutely.
well.
It's like, who would benefit most from the way that you teach, or, you know, the services that you have? Who do you want to serve? And it doesn't have to be fixed in stone. I mean, you know, you can have quite separate audiences. And the reason why we build up an audience persona is that, you know, it's easier to talk to an audience that you can see. So, you know, one of the exercises that we'll be doing is, you know, creating an actual person, a fictitious person that fits that persona. So, you know, you give them a name, you build up, you know, where they're likely to live, what their challenges are, and why they would be drawn to your sort of service. And so you can always tap into it. So when you're marketing or when you're creating content, you'll be thinking, oh, well, you know, and a lot of the time you would know a friend who's a bit like that. So you can even call it your friend's name, you know, this audience persona. And that's a great way of being able to visualize the content that you're writing to. And a lot of the time, you know, it isn't always about putting, you know, your view out there and what you do. It's also about self-inquiry and getting people to ask questions, and you asking them questions and seeing what responses they get. It's a conversational piece. Social media, you know, especially, is reciprocal. You know, it's great to engage as well as putting out your own content. So at the very least, if, you know, you feel that you haven't got the time or the bandwidth to put out as much content as you'd like to, as long as what you're doing is consistent to you, twice a week, for instance, but then jumping in and engaging as well is really important, because the people that want to connect with you would love to get that engagement back. So if you've asked them a question and they respond, you know, it's a great way to be able to kind of listen and respond and have that conversation, but in a more of an online space. It doesn't have to be just salesy, come to my workshop, do this, do that, I've got a class next week. It's part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way of looking at it as well, because social media in particular, just for many, and not just teachers, for people that work in social media as well, can just feel so all encompassing, and it can just feel really complex as well. Do you tell stories? Do you need to create lots of content every week and so on? And I think essentially it is a way of having a conversation with people that want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it is. It's having a conversation. And a lot of the time when you teach classes, little things will come up in that class that are quite topical. So it could be that, you know, you've taught a sequence, or you're teaching something with, like, you know, sort of opening up your heart, and a sort of something topical will come out of that. And I know where I've seen quite a lot of successful content coming from teachers is that the content is actually aligned with the theme and the purpose of their weekly classes. So what they're getting is benefit. They're getting, you know, insights from when and what they're doing in their classes, and they're pulling out those, you know, key nuggets or highlights, and then creating content in a social way or on their email newsletters. And I think that's a great way, because then also people get an insight into what happen if they then joined your class. So you can always do it very much in alignment with how you're teaching on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and something that a conversation that I've been having with teachers over the last sort of 6 months or so is just that with this job comes not much feedback. You know,
Yes.
so many jobs, you get feedback. How was that? How was that for your customer? How was that for your client? How was that for your colleague? And you know, you don't want to do that in Shavasana and or after Shavasana, not in Shavasana. But there's not that much space actually in classes for that interaction. So if you're a teacher that plans on, you know, just doing studio classes, there is something also there with learning some of these skills, which will help you get some feedback and actually be quite guiding to you
Absolutely.
in what you may do next, or you know, what people really enjoyed or what they were inquisitive about, for example.
Yeah, and a lot of the time you'll find that, you know, people inquisitive about something want to go deeper with that. So that might even define, you know, how you teach your next weekly class with them, because they, you know, enjoyed the challenge and they want to be taken deeper in a certain aspect. So it can be done in a way that really enhances what you do online and offline. And it's how you approach it. You know, is it selling? No, it's actually conversational. Is it sort of, are you sort of pushing something on someone who doesn't want to read it? Actually, no, you're putting the information out there, and the people that, you know, want to be connected with you will see it. But in a sea of information that we have out there, where people literally can, you know, in 4 seconds see so much information online, you will be drawn to the things that you're interested in. And that's why, you know, things like when I explain algorithms, which is such a term that makes people go, oh, you know, this is marketing speak. I don't really, and it sounds all, you know, not particularly nice, but algorithms actually existed because there was too much information out there, and they're trying to show by your habits online the content that you'd be most likely to want to read. So, you know, it's quite interesting that, you know, I will do a spin on anything that will, you know, possibly be a block or misconstrued, or, you know, just feeling like, oh, that's not something, that's a bit icky. And I will explain it in a way where there's a rational, you know, there's a reason behind it, and there's a reason why, you know, certain things exist, and authenticity will always win, you know, throughout all the changes that you get in technology, and all the changes, ironically, that have been done, for instance, by Google with SEO. So for anyone watching who doesn't know what SEO is, it's search engine optimization, which sounds like another scary term, but actually it just means how your website gets shown on Google or other search engines. And the changes that they've made over the years is that authentic content wins. And when you authentically write content, it isn't copied, that isn't written for search engines, isn't kind of done in a way where you're trying to optimize being shown. Authentic websites will win. And, you know, when I say win, they'll be shown, and they'll be shown in the right way to the right people. So, you know, behind the scenes in, you know, the sort of digital world, authenticity is the key. So, you know, if there's one thing that you could even take away from this conversation we're having right now, is that everything you do has got to kind of feel right. And if something feels wrong, you just have to question, does it feel wrong because I don't understand it? I don't understand this platform, or, you know, I feel a bit overwhelmed at, you know, programming my first advert or whatever. Or does it feel, you know, not right for me because authentically I shouldn't be going down that route? And I think by doing a workshop, you know, like the workshop I'm teaching, you'll learn the pros and cons of each platform. You'll learn the reasons behind it and the reasons why it would help enhance, you know, your discoverability and your connection. And then you can choose from then. There's not a structure that you go away from at the end of the full workshop and go, right, I've got this huge checklist and I have to set up a website and a Facebook group and whatever. You still will be authentically choosing the platforms that work for you.
Yeah, and I mean, just what you touch on as well, that Google and Facebook and a lot of these platforms, that there are, it can be quite difficult sometimes to keep up, because they do change
They
things
do, yeah.
a lot. Because I remember I used to work in marketing 8 years ago, and you know, people were just peppering their content with keywords. And so you'd have people come in and just sort of put yoga, 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 or you know, nidra, nidra over a blog, say, for example.
Yes.
But then that changed as well. So, you know, with you being a digital marketing consultant, you have, you know what these rules are and what what Google are looking for and how you can come up higher. And
yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing is that it's becoming more simplistic and authentic, all the changes that they implement. And that's reassuring because there's so
yeah,
much information, and people of all industries, or, you know, even for your own personal reasons, will have some aspect of an online presence. And the sheer volume of information out there, you know, they do want to make sure that they are showing good quality content. And so, and that's another thing that we will definitely go through in the workshops, is content creation authentically, telling your story authentically, and also weaving in the topics that you're passionate about. I mean, you know, I follow a lot of yoga teachers, and there's one yoga teacher who has technically nothing really to do with a nutritionist, but she's very passionate about, for instance, healthy eating. And every day she makes a smoothie, and she does a little live with just her making a smoothie and what goes in it, and it sparks off this whole great conversation. And it's just a quirky little thing that's unique to her. She's definitely not wanting to serve anyone with any, you know, additional nutritional services, but you never know, in 1 or 2 years time, that might be something that she kind of adds, you know, to her sort of list of services that she can offer. But it's quite interesting because she's just brought a little element that she's passionate about that kind of fits under the umbrella of wellness, but she gets a lot of engagement. And I think that that's quite sort of nice. It doesn't always that every bit of content you put out has an outcome, like, oh, well, I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z because in 3 weeks' time I'm teaching a workshop on, you know, advanced positions or something like that, you know, a headstand workshop. Actually, you know, you can put out content that just weaves in you as a person and the things that you're passionate about, because people want to be attracted as well to the teacher that is going to be guiding them.
yeah, it sounds like there's a real opportunity there to just share some wisdom as well, and that might not be anything to do with advertising your classes, because you know
Yeah,
we learn so much through yoga, uh, and sometimes I just feel like, you know, teachers want to share that with their students. They just want to share these little nuggets that they've learned and that they've integrated into their lives, and that has been helpful for their own wellness, their own mental health, their own physical health. Um, and it feels like that these communication channels and some of these skills can also be about getting your voice heard as a teacher, and that is
absolutely.
not
Yeah.
just about selling something or advertising something. It's like a piece, it's a way of getting yourself and your thoughts and the wisdom
It
that
is. It's
you've got.
finding yourself. You're finding your voice and your authentic voice, and something that feels good. And you know, that's exactly that. When you're starting to use these channels of communication, you're communicating more, and it actually becomes easier. You'll get to a point where you'll be, you know, putting content out there and communicating, connecting in a very easy way. It will feel ease rather than the kind of dis-ease that just feels uncomfortable. You know, I just invite people to come in, and whatever feels uncomfortable, you know, from an education point of view, we can work through, and you can get those skill sets to make an informed decision whether that's something that you want to do. And you will, as you evolve over the years, you know, you can then tap into different audiences. You can kind of move with the trends if you want to, but I think learning those basic skills is really important, so you understand it. And another thing as well, you know, collaboration, which is an important thing. You know, eventually you'll be collaborating in some form of way with someone else within the yoga industry, whether that's being on a retreat with them, you know, collaborating, doing a workshop, or working with a yoga studio. And collaboration and social media just go absolutely hand in hand, you know, and you all have like-minded audiences, and there's a real like lovely sort of community feel that's out there if you want to tap into it. But as I said, it isn't always about social media. At the very base, it's about having just a lovely representation of you online via a website that just works well, that can be found well, and then, you know, email data so that you can communicate with your sort of growing audience as time goes on.
Yeah, yeah. And just sort of one of my questions is that there are lots of courses out there for social media and email
Yes.
marketing. There's so many digital marketing skills courses out there. This one's specifically for yoga teachers. Can you tell me a little bit about what makes these workshops helpful for yoga teachers, as opposed to just going off and learning generic digital skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically all of the examples and case studies, and also my back history of working in the yoga and wellness industry, marketing a variety of different things, from wellness festivals to working with Hay House authors, to working with, you know, individual yoga teachers, to studios. So, you know, I've seen at firsthand what works, and the industry is very specific. The wellness and yoga industry, just as we spoke about at the beginning of our conversation, there is a feeling of, you know, it goes against the sort of, you know, the nature of, you know, what we're trying to do, even though it shouldn't do. It's just a preconception, you know, it feels salesy, feels icky, feels whatever. And so really I address all of this in the workshop. And also all the examples are from, you know, past campaigns, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Also, all of the terminology is going to be specifically for the yoga industry. So rather than using all the terminology like upsell, algorithms, you know, return on investment, and all these quite kind of hard words that actually cause quite a lot of resistance and a bit of a mindset block, to helping you be open and approach marketing in a more connective way, that's not part of the workshop. We address that, and then the words that are used will help bring that kind of openness and connection. But ultimately, my history is in the wellness and yoga industry, so I specifically know, you know, what works, what doesn't. And I also understand the challenges of when someone's approaching marketing for the first time or wanting to learn the ropes, and, you know, and also just to kind of help them through those initial blocks. So you just become empowered. It's good to just understand it and make your own decisions moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I've worked with you before, with you helping us with our digital marketing, and one thing that just really strikes me is that when you explain things, I do get them. It feels like you have a really good way of just cutting through, because this is, you know, you're not going to have people that are massively what you may do, but most of us are not massively skilled when it comes to tech. And even if you do get those skills, you have these changes within Google and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how this all came about really is that we saw that teachers needed these skills, and that they want this to be useful, you know, rather than just some theory that sits there. It
Yeah.
needs to be practical. You know, these workshops are very practical on how you can get out there as a teacher and offer those
Yeah,
services,
absolutely.
or
It's not
offer
just
materials.
theory based. Yeah, it's definitely not just theory based. It's I'd like, you know, you to come away from the workshop with learning and being able to implement, because there's no point learning and learning, because we do also live, this is one thing that probably has come up, it's a world of online learning, but unless you implement or put into practice what you've learned, you know, it won't make complete sense. You have to follow the process, and so it will be broken down into little stages that will be easy for you to go, right, okay, I'm going to implement that. Now I've got an overview of all the platforms and I know the pros and cons. I'm going to set up one, because to do one well is the method that I want to choose. I want to do one channel well and get my email list, you know, increasing. And you'll be able to take away the insights, and, you know, there will be some practical help so that you can implement. And that's the thing that I think is really important, because there's no point having 2 hours worth of, you know, the theory of digital marketing. We all, you know, we could speak about the benefits and how the world's changed, but how does that apply to the person who's participating in the workshop? You know, everyone's got a unique journey. They may be at very different stages. It could be that it's their full-time job. It could be that something on the side. I know, you know, we were talking earlier about a couple of the questions that I often get is how to have an online presence when your existing online presence is very different because you've worked in a different industry. Is that, how do you have a double online presence? And that's a challenge for a lot of people when they're, you know, probably in that halfway house where they're teaching yoga, they've, you know, gone through the yoga teacher training, but they're not like a you know, full-time yoga teacher, and they've still got an online presence, you know. And those are the sorts of, you know, complexities that, you know, I will be able to help with, you know, based on being involved in the yoga and wellness industry. You know, it's a lot of little challenges like that that you won't just get in a straight digital marketing course.
Thanks, Lynda. We've come to time now. Thank you. That was really insightful. You've made me think about some things that I haven't thought about before. So I'm going to put the web pages into the chat on this Facebook Live. We're doing 4 workshops. They're about 2 to 3 hours. There'll be some interactive elements, some skills, some tools there. And really this is for anybody who wants to use digital marketing to increase their presence. You don't have to be doing online classes. You don't have to want to be on social media all the time. It doesn't have to take up, all of your time. And I think what I have also seen in the last six months or so is that there are some teachers out there that were teaching yoga as a side hustle, and they want to make that their maybe their full-time hustle, or they want to migrate towards that. And I do think that having some of these skills is a really good way for you to be able to migrate from maybe doing a couple of classes a week to doing more, by increasing your audience and going out to new people and just telling the world what you're offering, really.
Well, this is exactly it. You say the world, and that's the absolute positive thing about online, that it's limitless. Yeah. We're not limited by the area that we live in. And that's one thing, that I'm very grateful for, that the online world is out there, and you can be discoverable and you can connect with audiences all around the world. So it can evolve as your career evolves.
Yeah, and as the world is somehow evolving as well,
Yes.
whether it's a choice or not. Thanks, Lynda. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.